$3,000 lay on the black marble table like a test from fate itself. 30 crisp $100 bills, still warm from the pocket of the most dangerous man in Chicago. Her fingers hovered just above the money. No one was watching. The security cameras had been down for weeks. The floor manager was passed out drunk in the back office. The other waitresses had already gone home. It was only her, the empty restaurant, and $3,000 that did not belong to her. She knew it was an accident. She had seen the way his hands shook when that phone call came. She had watched the face that was usually carved from stone crumble into raw terror as he whispered, "Where is he? What have they done to my son?" She had watched him throw the cash down without counting, without looking, his mind already racing toward whatever nightmare waited for him in the dark streets of the South Side. This was not a tip. This was a desperate mistake. Keeping it would be theft. But letting it go meant her daughter, Mia, would miss her heart medication tonight. It meant another night of watching her little girl fight for every breath while Lila prayed for a miracle that never arrived. She had 30 seconds to decide who she truly was when no one was looking. What she did next would not only change her life, it would reveal a secret neither of them could have imagined. But first she had to catch a mafia king racing toward the worst night of his life. And she had only minutes before his black Rolls Royce vanished into the Chicago night forever. If the weight of Lila's impossible choice pulls at your heart, stay with me. Leave a like. Share this with someone who loves stories that matter, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Because what Lila is about to discover will shatter everything she thought she knew about the man in the $1,000 suit. The decision she makes in the next 60 seconds will either save her soul or drag her into a world of killers and shadows from which there is no escape. To understand why Lila stood there trembling over $3,000, we must go back. 6 years earlier, Evelyn Lila Whitaker had still believed in love. She had believed in Grant, the man with the charming smile and promises as sweet as honey. She was pregnant with Mia when she learned that smile hid a monster. The first time Grant hit her was when she asked about money missing from their account. The second time was when she mentioned a prenatal checkup. After the third time, she stopped counting. Lila endured the entire pregnancy because she had nowhere else to go. Her mother had died of cancer. Her father had left when she was a child. She had no siblings, no relatives, no one at all. Only Grant and the blows that came in the middle of the night. The night Mia was born, Grant was not there. He was at a casino burning money on poker and cocaine. Lila looked at her tiny daughter with black hair and blue eyes just like her own, and swore that Mia would never have to witness what she had endured. 6 months later, doctors discovered Mia had a congenital heart condition, a ventricular septal defect. The baby needed surgery that cost $80,000. Insurance refused to cover it because it was a pre-existing condition. Lila collapsed right there in the clinic and no one was there to catch her. Grant vanished. One morning, Lila woke to an empty closet, an empty wallet, and a note on the table that said only 2 words, "I'm sorry." He was not apologizing for beating her. He was apologizing for leaving behind a $15,000 debt to Harlan Crow, the man people called the Shark. Harlan did not care where Grant had gone. He only cared about the money. When Grant disappeared, Harlan came knocking on Lila's door. "I don't know where my husband is," Lila said, voice shaking though she tried to keep it steady. Harlan smiled the smile of a man who had heard that sentence too many times. "You're his wife," he said. "His debt is your debt. 15,000, 30 days. If not, I'll take something worth more than money." His gaze drifted toward the bedroom where Mia slept in her crib. Lila understood. From that moment, she worked as if tomorrow did not exist. By day, she waited tables at the Velvet Room, Chicago's most luxurious restaurant. By night, from 11 until 3, she cleaned offices in a downtown high-rise. She slept 3 hours a night, sometimes less. Coffee became the blood in her veins. The dark circles beneath her eyes became permanent. She was 27 years old but looked 35. Mrs. Donnelly, the 68-year-old widow next door, watched Mia whenever Lila worked. She never took money, only saying she was lonely and that Mia brought her joy. But lately, Lila had noticed her coughing more, moving more slowly, sometimes forgetting where she was. Lila was afraid of losing Mrs. Donnelly, afraid of not having enough for Mia's surgery, afraid Harlan Crow would carry out his threat. And tonight, standing before $3,000 on a marble table, Lila feared one thing most of all, that desperation would turn her into someone she never wanted to become. But there was something stronger than fear. It was the whisper she had heard on that phone call. "What did you do to my son?" It was the face of a father losing the most important thing in his life. Lila knew that feeling. She lived with it every single day. 3 hours earlier, Layla had been standing in the kitchen of the Velvet Room, trying to swallow the pain burning through her lower back. The orthopedic shoes she had bought on installments were worn down to nothing. Her shift had started at 11 that morning. Now it was almost 7 in the evening. She had been on her feet for nearly 8 continuous hours. The Velvet Room was not an ordinary restaurant. It was where people proposed over $10,000 bottles of wine and million-dollar deals were signed at tables draped in white silk. The crystal chandeliers cost more than Lila would earn in 10 years, and most customers looked straight through her as if she were made of air. Table 12, Whitaker. Reginald Gaines's voice cut through her thoughts. Reginald was the floor manager, a thin man with a sharp nose and words even sharper. He treated employees like slaves, yet bowed deeply to wealthy guests with a level of enthusiasm that made people sick. Lila turned. "Yes, sir." Reginald looked her up and down, lips pressed in open contempt. "You look like hell," he said. "At least try not to ruin the customers' appetites." She swallowed the humiliation like bitter medicine. "Yes, sir." Reginald added, "The Onyx Room has a special guest tonight. Don't mess this up." The Onyx Room. Lila felt her throat tighten. It was the private VIP area reserved for clients who did not want to be seen. In 4 years, she had been assigned there only 3 times, each because there was no one else. She picked up the leather-bound menu and water carafe, then walked through the main dining hall, legs protesting every step. The Onyx Room sat in the farthest corner, hidden behind a black velvet curtain. When Lila lifted the curtain and stepped inside, she nearly stopped cold. She recognized him instantly. Who in Chicago did not know Damian Blackthorn? Business magazines called him an investment genius who had turned Blackthorn Industries into a multi-billion-dollar empire. On the streets, people whispered another name, the boss. The ruler of Chicago's shadows, the man who made it simple. If you owed money, you paid or you disappeared. Damian Blackthorn sat alone in the corner, leaning back in his chair, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking Italian, voice low and steady, every word carrying the weight of an order that could not be challenged. 36 years old, black hair, steel gray eyes. A thin scar ran along the outer corner of his left eye, and Lila wondered how many people had looked at that scar before they died. "Sir," she said softly as she approached, "may I get you some water?" Damian looked up. For a brief moment, he did not see her at all. His eyes were somewhere distant, cold, calculating. Then he blinked, and that gaze locked onto Lila's face. "Still water," he said curtly. "No ice, and a Wagyu ribeye, rare." Lila nodded, pouring the water with steady hands, even as her heart raced. As she set the glass down, she noticed him open his wallet. In that unguarded second, she saw a small laminated photograph. A boy of about 8 with black hair like his father's, smiling brightly beside a red bicycle. Damian Blackthorn, the mafia boss who made all of Chicago tremble, carried his son's photo in his wallet like any ordinary father. Lila left the Onyx Room with a strange feeling she could not name. She did not know that within hours that photograph would change everything. The dish arrived perfectly cooked. The Wagyu beef was grilled just right, outer crust golden, inside a deep ruby red. Lila set the plate down with the precision of a surgeon. Damian barely looked at the food. He cut a piece, chewed mechanically, then pushed the plate away. His phone lay face down on the table, and every few seconds he glanced at it, then at his watch. A platinum Patek Philippe Lila guest cost more than her crumbling apartment. "Is there something wrong with the meal, sir?" she asked. "It's fine," he replied curtly. Then, after a pause, "Bring the check, I have to go." Lila processed the payment quickly. The total came to $287. When she returned with the receipt, Damian was already on his feet, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking English now, voice low and tight. "Victor, I don't care what the board says. Rearrange it, all of it." Then his phone rang again. Another call. Damian looked at the screen, and Lila saw something shift in his eyes. Just a fraction of a second, but she recognized it. Hesitation. Something she guessed had never existed in this man before. He answered, "Blackthorn." And then the world stopped. Lila was setting the receipt on the table when she saw Damian's hand begin to shake. Not a slight tremor. It shook as if someone had pulled the bones from his body. The face that had always seemed carved from stone collapsed, shattered into something raw and panicked enough to steal Lila's breath. "Where is he?" Damian whispered, voice strangled. "What did you do to my son?" "Caleb," the boy in the photograph. Lila felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. "What do they want?" Damian asked. And for the first time in her life, Lila heard something she had never imagined coming from the mouth of a mafia boss, pleading, I'm coming now. Don't touch him. Don't touch my son." Damian ended the call. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring into nothing as if his soul had left his body. Then he snapped back. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick wad of cash, and threw it onto the table without looking, without counting. His hands shook so badly that several bills fluttered free and drifted to the floor like autumn leaves. He did not pick them up. He did not look back. Damian Blackthorn stormed out of the Onyx room in long, urgent strides, his coat flaring behind him. Lila stood there, heart pounding, watching his figure vanish behind the black velvet curtain. Then she looked down at the table. $300 bills fanned across the black marble, still warm from his pocket. $3,000 for a meal that cost $287. She knew this was not a tip. No one tipped 10 times the bill, not even a billionaire. This was the mistake of a panicked father, a man who had just learned his son was in enemy hands. Lila looked toward the window. Through the glass, she saw Damian climb into a sleek black Rolls-Royce. The engine roared, and the car shot into the Chicago night like a bullet. She knew she had only minutes before he was gone forever. $3,000 lay there, silent, waiting, like a test. Lila's hand moved toward the stack of cash. Her fingers stopped less than a knuckle away from the first $100 bill. $3,000. It was 6 months of heart medication for Mia. It was a quarter of the debt Harlan Crow was demanding. It was survival. And no one was watching. The security camera had been broken for 3 weeks. Reginald was drunk out of his mind in the back room. The other waitresses had all gone home. All she had to do was fold the bills, slip them into her apron, and walk out as if nothing had happened. No one would know. No one would care. But Lila would know, and she would care. She would look into Mia's eyes every day and know she had stolen from a father who was losing his child. She would look into the mirror and see the person Grant had tried to turn her into. No. Lila gathered all 30 bills, including the ones that had fallen to the floor, folded them neatly, and tucked them into her apron pocket. Then she turned and ran out of the Onyx room. My God. Tanya's voice rang out the moment Lila burst through the kitchen doors. Her coworker stood by the sink, eyes wide as saucers. Is that money? 3,000? He forgot it, Lila gasped. I have to return it. Tanya blinked, then laughed, a short, sharp sound as if Lila had said the most insane thing she had ever heard. Return it? Are you crazy? That's Damian Blackthorn. I know who he is, Lila said. You have no idea. Tanya grabbed her arm, eyes filled with real fear. People die for getting close to him, Lila. Die. Who do you think you are, chasing after a mafia boss to return $3,000? He'll think you're a spy, an enemy, anything except a kind waitress. He'll kill you before you even open your mouth. Lila looked into Tanya's eyes and saw genuine terror. Tanya was not exaggerating. Damian Blackthorn was a name people only whispered in the dark. But Lila saw something else, too. She saw Damian's face when he heard his son had been taken. She saw the trembling hands, the strangled voice, the panicked eyes of a father about to lose the most important thing in his life. I'm a mother, Lila said, voice strangely calm. I understand. Tanya fell silent. If someone took Mia, Lila went on, I'd lose my mind the same way. I'd forget everything. And if someone chased after me just to return something I dropped, I'd want to know. I'd need to know there were still good people in this world. Tanya stared at her, mouth open, unable to speak. Lila tightened her grip on the bills in her apron pocket. Do you know where he went? Earlier, I heard Reginald on the phone, Tanya whispered, sounding dazed. Something happened on the south side, an old warehouse near the docks. But Lila, you can't go there. That's their territory. You won't come out alive. But Lila was no longer listening. She burst out the back door, crossed the dark alley, and ran to the employee parking lot where her battered Honda Civic waited. The 14-year-old car groaned as she opened the door. The engine coughed and sputtered when she turned the key, but it started. Lila hit the gas. The car shot out of the lot and into the flow of the Chicago night. She had minutes before the black Rolls-Royce vanished into the darkness. Minutes to chase down a mafia boss. And she did not know that those minutes would change her fate forever. The Chicago night stretched out before Lila like a maze of neon lights and shadow. The Honda Civic groaned beneath her, its aging engine protesting every burst of speed. She drove as if demons were chasing her, slipping through lanes, pushing past yellow lights, cutting sharply into streets she only knew from rumor. The South Side, a place people said you never stepped into unless you belonged there, especially at night, especially alone. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Lila nearly swerved into the curb. She pulled it out with one hand, eyes locked on the road ahead. A message from an unknown number, though she knew exactly who it was. 10 days left. Don't think about running. I know where you are. I know where your kid goes to school. Harlan Crow, the shark. Lila felt her stomach twist tight. 10 days, $15,000. She did not have a single cent. And now she was driving into mafia territory to return $3,000 to a crime boss. If Tanya could see her now, she would swear Lila had lost her mind. Maybe she had. But then Mia's face rose in her thoughts. The baby probably asleep in Mrs. Donnelly's arms right now. Black hair spread across the pillow, lips parted, small chest lifting unevenly because her tiny heart did not work the way it should. Mia knew nothing about Harlan Crow, nothing about her father's debt, nothing about the nights her mother lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting coins in her wallet, and wondering how to survive one more day. Mia only knew that her mother loved her, and Lila would do anything to protect that, even chase a mafia boss into the dark, even face killers, even die. The car turned into the old industrial zone near the docks. Abandoned factories stood like ghosts on either side, shattered windows gaping like empty eye sockets. Most of the streetlights did not work. Only a few flickering bulbs cast weak yellow streaks across the cracked asphalt. Lila switched off her headlights and slowed down. Her instincts told her she was close. And they were right. She saw them. 5 sleek black cars lined up in front of an old warehouse, gleaming against the ruin like diamonds in a pile of trash. Bentleys, Mercedes, BMWs, each one worth more than everything she owned. And around them were men, at least 6 that she could see, all in black suits, all standing with the posture of men accustomed to violence. Cold moonlight glinted off something metallic beneath their jackets. Guns. Lila parked in the shadows about 50 meters away, crouched behind a rusted shipping container, heart pounding like a war drum, blood roaring in her ears. She could not walk in through the front. That was obvious. Those men would shoot her before she could say a word. But Lila was not a stranger to slipping through darkness. She had done it countless times when Grant was drunk and she needed to get Mia out of the house. She knew how to become invisible. She knew how to move without making a sound. 4 years of waiting tables had taught her the art of disappearing. Lila opened the car door slowly, slid out like a shadow. She followed the side of the container, circling toward the back of the warehouse, and she found it. A rusted iron door at the rear, cracked open just wide enough for a small woman to slip through. No guards. Lila drew a deep breath. She thought of Mia. She thought of the $3,000 in her apron pocket. She thought of Damian Blackthorn's panicked face when he learned his son had been taken. Then she eased through the gap and stepped into the darkness. Inside the warehouse was a different world. The smell of old engine oil and thick dust rushed into Lila's nose, forcing her to cover her mouth to keep from coughing. Light from a few industrial bulbs dangling from the ceiling spilled down in dull yellow streaks, leaving most of the space swallowed by darkness. Lila pressed herself behind a stack of rotting wooden crates, heart pounding as she listened to voices echoing from the center of the warehouse. Men's voices, several of them, and one voice she recognized instantly: Damian Blackthorn. She moved carefully, weaving between abandoned containers and rusted machinery, edging closer to the source of the sound. When she found a place to see clearly, the sight before her froze the blood in her veins. Caleb sat on a wooden chair in the middle of the warehouse, hands bound behind his back, feet tied to the chair legs. The boy from the photograph, the boy smiling beside a red bicycle, was now crying silently. His face was streaked with tears, his lips trembling, his eyes wide with terror. And directly behind him stood a tall man pressing a gun to the child's temple. Facing Caleb was Damian. The most powerful mafia boss in Chicago stood there with both hands raised in surrender. Around him were 3 other men, all aiming guns at him. The leader stood directly in front of Damian, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a cruel smile. "Who do you think you are, Blackthorn?" the man sneered, voice dripping with pleasure. "Your empire is about to fall. You've ruled Chicago for too long. It's time for change." Damian did not look at him. His eyes were locked on Caleb, on the gun pressed against his son's head. "What do you want?" he asked, voice stretched tight as wire. "You know what I want," the man laughed. "The Northern Territory, the shipping routes through the port, and 30% of the casino revenue." "Fine," Damian said immediately, without a second of hesitation. "Take whatever you want. Just let my son go." Lila saw the flicker of shock cross the leader's face. He had not expected Damian to surrender so quickly, but the cruel smile returned, just as fast. "That easy?" He tilted his head. "I don't believe it. You're playing me, aren't you? The great Damian Blackthorn never surrenders." He signaled to the gunman behind Caleb. The man pressed the barrel harder against the boy's head. Caleb let out a muffled scream, his cry choking in his throat. And Damian Blackthorn, the man who made all of Chicago tremble, the man who never bowed to anyone, did something no one had ever seen. He dropped to his knees. Both knees hit the cold concrete floor, his steel-gray eyes filled with desperation, with pleading. Lila felt tears spill over. She saw a father, just a father begging for his child's life, like her, like any parent in this world. The leader burst into laughter. The sound echoed through the warehouse like a crow's cry. "Look at this," he shouted to his men. "The great Damian Blackthorn is on his knees. This is the best day of my life." He turned back to Damian, eyes glittering with malice. "But I'm afraid I don't believe you, Blackthorn. You killed my brother 5 years ago. You think I'm going to let you live? No. Today you'll watch your son die, then you'll die, and your empire will be mine. He raised his hand, signaling the gunman. Shoot him. A gunshot tore through the air, but it did not come from the gun at Caleb's head. The shots came from outside, then another and another. Glass shattered. Men shouted. Feet ran. Elias had arrived. Lila did not know who Elias was, but she guessed he was Damian's right-hand man, the one he had called from the restaurant, and he had not come alone. Chaos exploded. Guards from outside poured in, shouting orders. The leader spun around, drew his gun, and fired toward the main entrance. Damian lunged forward, punching a man who had been aiming at him. And in that split second of chaos, the gunman behind Caleb lost focus. He turned toward the door, the gun lifting from the boy's head for an instant. Lila did not think. She did not hesitate. A mother's instinct seized her body. She burst from her hiding place, ran through the gunfire, knocked a man aside, and reached Caleb. She wrapped her arms around the boy, shielding him with her own body. Someone shouted, "A girl! Where did she come from?" The gunman turned back, eyes locking on Lila's. He raised the gun and aimed straight at her head. Time slowed. Lila saw his finger tighten on the trigger. She held Caleb tighter, closed her eyes, and thought of Mia. "My daughter, I'm sorry." A shot rang out, but death did not come. Lila opened her eyes. The gunman lay sprawled on the concrete, a bright red bullet hole in the center of his forehead. Behind him stood Damian Blackthorn, the gun still smoking in his hand. His eyes met Lila's, and in those steel-gray eyes she saw something she had not expected. Not anger, not suspicion, but gratitude. The final gunshot echoed, and then silence fell. The warehouse now looked like a battlefield, the air thick with the stench of gunpowder and blood. The kidnappers lay scattered across the floor, some motionless, some groaning in pain. The leader lay face down at Damian's feet, his body lifeless. And in the middle of all that chaos, Lila was still holding Caleb tight, her body wrapped around him like a living shield. She was shaking uncontrollably, but she did not let go. She could not let go. A man stepped closer, tall, around 40, hair cut short in a military style, face carved from stone. He wore a black suit, and the gun in his hand was still smoking. Elias, Damian Blackthorn's right-hand man. And he was aiming the gun straight at Lila's head. "Who are you?" Elias asked, voice cold as ice. "How did you get in here?" Lila wanted to answer, but her throat was dry. She could only hold Caleb tighter, feeling the small body trembling in her arms. "She's a witness," Elias said, never taking his eyes off Lila. "She saw everything. You know the rules, boss. No witnesses." His finger tightened on the trigger. Lila looked straight back at him. She did not beg. She did not cry. She only thought of Mia, of her daughter waking up in the morning with no mother there, of Mrs. Donnelly having to tell the child that her mother had not come home. "Stop!" Damian's voice cut through the air like a blade. Elias froze but did not lower the gun. "Boss, I said stop." Damian stepped forward, placing himself between Lila and Elias's gun. His back shielded her the same way she had shielded Caleb. "Lower the gun." Elias stared at his boss for a long moment, then finally obeyed. The gun dropped, though suspicion still burned in his eyes as he looked at Lila. Damian turned to face her. His steel-gray eyes swept over her from head to toe, as if trying to solve a riddle that made no sense. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low and guarded. "Why are you here?" Lila swallowed. Her hands were still shaking, but she forced her voice to stay steady. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her apron pocket, moving carefully so no one would think she was drawing a weapon. Then she pulled out the money, $300 bills now crumpled and damp with sweat. She held them out toward Damian. "You forgot this at the restaurant." Silence fell over the warehouse. Elias's mouth dropped open. The other men stopped what they were doing, staring at Lila as if she had grown another head. And Damian, the most powerful mafia boss in Chicago, stood frozen like a statue. "You..." Elias finally said, voice thick with disbelief. You risked your life, drove across the city at night, snuck into a mafia stronghold, ran through gunfire, almost died, for $3,000? This was your mistake, Lila replied, tone strangely calm. It doesn't belong to me. Damian still said nothing. He just looked at her, and in his eyes Lila saw something shifting. A small sob broke the silence. Caleb. The boy was still tied to the chair, still trembling, tears streaming down his cheeks. He looked at his father, then at Lila, then at the bodies around him, and his breathing began to quicken in panic. Lila forgot everything else. She forgot Elias and the gun. She forgot Damian and his searching stare. She dropped to her knees in front of Caleb, bringing herself level with his eyes. Hey, she said softly, voice suddenly gentle, the same voice she used when she lulled Mia to sleep. Look at me. What's your name? The boy hiccuped. Caleb. I'm Lila. She smiled even though her lips were still trembling. My daughter gets scared like this too, but I taught her a trick. Do you want to learn it? Caleb nodded, tears still in his eyes, but the panic easing. Close your eyes, Lila said. Take a deep breath in, then count backward from 10. With each number, breathe out a little. When you reach 1, you'll feel better. Try it. The boy obeyed. 10, he breathed in. 9, a shaky exhale. 8, 7, 6. His breathing slowly steadied. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When Caleb opened his eyes, he was much calmer. He looked at Lila, and for the first time, a small smile appeared on his lips. Thank you. Lila smiled back, then lifted her gaze and met Damian's eyes. The mafia boss was looking at her with an expression she could not read. No longer cold, no longer suspicious, but something deeper, more complex, as if he were seeing her for the first time, as if he were seeing something he had forgotten still existed in this world. Elias, untie Caleb, Damian said, voice strangely gentle. Then take him to the car. And you... He looked at Lila. You're coming with me. We need to talk. The black Rolls-Royce glided through the Chicago night like a hunting beast. Cream leather interior, the scent of sandalwood and money. Lila sat in the back seat, feeling as if she had landed on another planet. Just a few hours earlier, she had been wiping tables in a restaurant, and now she was sitting across from the most powerful mafia boss in the city. Damian sat opposite her, one leg crossed over the other, eyes never leaving her face. Up front, Elias drove, occasionally glancing at her in the rearview mirror with eyes still full of suspicion. Caleb had already been taken ahead in another car, escorted by 2 guards back to the estate. How long have you worked at the Velvet Room? Damian asked, voice low and even as if he were asking about the weather rather than interrogating her. 4 years, Lila answered briefly. 4 years, he repeated, and tonight was the 4th time you served the Onyx Room. Damian tilted his head, a small movement, deliberate and calculating. Do you have a family? Lila stiffened. That's not your concern. Everything is my concern if I decide it is, Damian replied, tone unchanged but edged with something sharper. You saw what happened tonight. You know who I am, you know what I can do, and yet you're sitting here looking me in the eye, telling me it's none of my business. You're either very brave or very foolish. Lila met his cold gray stare. She thought of Grant, of the blows, of the nights she had swallowed her tears and bowed her head to survive. She had sworn she would never bow to another man again, not even a mafia boss. You can kill me, she said, voice strangely calm, but you don't have the right to know about my family. Damian studied her for a long moment. Then the unthinkable happened. He laughed. Not a cold or mocking laugh, but a short sound, almost amused. Brave, he concluded. Elias, run a check on her. Elias pulled out his phone, made a brief call, spoke a few words, then waited in silence. Minutes later, his phone vibrated. He read the message, and the stone-carved face finally changed. "Boss," Elias said, voice tight. "Her name is Evelyn Whitaker, 27 years old. She's a waitress at the Velvet Room and works night cleaning shifts at an office building. She has a 5-year-old daughter named Mia, congenital heart disease." Lila felt the blood rush to her face. They had uncovered everything in minutes. "Ex-husband named Grant," Elias continued. "Drug addiction, domestic violence. He disappeared a year ago, leaving behind a $15,000 debt to Harlan Crow." Lila froze, heart skipping when she heard that name spoken out loud. "Harlan Crow?" Damian asked, voice turning sharp. "The shark?" Elias nodded. "The same Harlan Crow, a lone shark operating on the south side. And boss, there's more. Harlan Crow works for Vincenzo Rossi." The air in the car thickened. Lila did not fully understand what was happening, but she saw Damian's expression change. "Vincenzo Rossi was the man who took Caleb tonight," Elias said. "Correct. Vincenzo orchestrated tonight's kidnapping. He used Harlan Crow's network to gather information and track Caleb's movements." Damian turned to Lila, and in his eyes she saw something shift. Not suspicion, not scrutiny, recognition. "You're being threatened by my enemy," he said slowly. "You owe money to Vincenzo Rossi's people. You're already in their sights without knowing it." A chill ran down Lila's spine. She thought of Harlan's message, 10 days. "I know where your child goes to school," and she realized she was not just running from a debt. She was caught in a war between forces she could never have imagined. "And you still came," Damian said, voice carrying something she could not name. "You knew you were being threatened. You needed money more than anyone, and yet you chased me to return $3,000. She looked at him silent. The quiet stretched. Then Damian spoke again, tone lower. "I think we need to talk a lot more, Evelyn Whitaker." The car came to a stop at the curb, engine still purring softly. Through the window, Lila recognized her own apartment building, an aging structure with stained walls and rusted iron stairs. Seen from inside the luxury of a Rolls-Royce, it looked more worn and fragile than ever. Damian looked up at the building without speaking. Then he turned to Lila. "I have a proposition," he said, voice low and deliberate, as if weighing every word. "I'll erase your debt to Harlan Crow. $15,000, gone as if it never existed, and you'll work for me." Lila looked at him, heart beating faster. "I don't need charity. I don't need anyone's pity." Damian did not seem offended. He simply looked at her with a calm that was almost unsettling. "This isn't charity. This is business. You work for me. I pay you properly. The debt being erased is part of the agreement, not a gift." "What kind of work?" Lila asked, unable to hide her suspicion. "I'm just a waitress. I don't know anything about your world. I don't know how to use a gun. I can't fight. I don't know anything you'd need." Damian was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, and something in his voice had shifted. "I don't need you to know how to use a gun. I have hundreds of men who know how to use guns. What I need is something far rarer." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you know who sold out my son tonight?" Lila shook her head. "Someone inside my organization," Damian said, and for the first time Lila heard a slow-burning anger beneath his control. "Someone I trusted leaked Caleb's schedule to Vincenzo Rossi. Someone took money in exchange for my son's life, and I don't know who it is." Lila looked at him and began to understand. He was surrounded by traitors. He could not trust anyone, and she, a complete outsider, was the only person that night who had done the right thing without asking for anything in return. "I need someone I can trust," Damian continued. "I need someone with integrity, with morals, someone who notices what others overlook. You've been a waitress for 4 years. You know how to be invisible. You know how to watch people when they think no one important is looking. That's a skill most of my people don't have." "You want me to be a spy," Lila said bluntly. "I want you to observe," Damian replied. "There's a difference. I don't need you to sabotage anyone. I just need you to help me see the truth. You'll attend meetings, dinners with partners, corporate events. You'll stand in the corner and watch how people behave when they think no one significant is watching, and you'll report to me what you see. Lila fell silent, weighing the choice. This was an opportunity. She knew it. The debt to Harlan Crow would disappear. Mia would be safe. She would have money to care for her daughter. But this was also a world of shadows, a world of guns and blood, a world she had just witnessed where people died without warning. Did she want to pull Mia into that world? If I agree, she said slowly, I have one condition. Damian tilted his head. You're not in a position to set conditions. Then we have nothing to discuss. Lila placed her hand on the door handle, ready to step out. Damian studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke. What's your condition? My daughter. Lila turned back, meeting his eyes. Mia is never involved, never. She knows nothing about this world, and she never will. If anything threatens my child, even the faintest shadow of danger, I walk away immediately, and you won't stop me. Damian was silent. In the darkness of the car, Lila could not read his expression. Then he nodded. Fine, he said, voice firm and final. Your daughter will be safe, I promise. And when Damian Blackthorn promised, Lila understood it was not empty words. It was a pact sealed by the honor of a boss. When do I start? She asked. Tomorrow, Damian replied. Elias will pick you up at 8 in the morning. And Evelyn? She looked at him. Thank you for saving my son tonight. Lila said nothing. She only nodded, opened the door, and stepped out. The Rolls-Royce glided away into the night, leaving her standing alone in front of the aging building. Lila looked up at the third-floor window where Mia was sleeping in Mrs. Donnelly's arms. I'll protect you, she whispered, no matter the cost. The next morning, Lila went to the Velvet Room for the last time. She walked through the employee entrance and into the familiar kitchen, filled with the smell of food and the clatter of dishes. Reginald stood by the bar, checking the reservation list with his usual permanent scowl. When he saw Lila, he raised an eyebrow. You're early, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. That's a surprise. I'm here to resign, Lila replied, placing an envelope on the counter. Effective immediately. Reginald looked at the envelope, then at her, and burst out laughing. His laughter echoed through the kitchen, drawing a few other employees to turn and look. Resign? He shook his head, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Where do you think you're going to find a job, Whitaker? Looking like that with your past. You'll be back here on your knees begging for work within a week. Mark my words. Lila looked at him. The man who had humiliated her for 4 years, who had made her feel small and worthless every single day. And for the first time, she felt neither fear nor anger. She felt only pity. Goodbye, Reginald, she said calmly, then turned and walked away. She did not look back. A black Mercedes was already waiting by the back entrance. Elias behind the wheel with the same stone-cold expression. He said nothing as Lila got in, simply drove her to the address Damian had arranged. The new apartment was in a high-end building on the north side with round-the-clock security, cameras everywhere, and a locking system that took Lila 10 minutes to learn how to use. 2 bedrooms, a spacious living room, a fully equipped kitchen, and windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. Mia ran through the apartment, eyes shining like Christmas night. Mom, my room has a balcony. I can see the whole city. Lila watched her daughter, throat tightening. It was the first time in Mia's life she had her own room, the first time she did not have to sleep in the same bed as her mother in a cramped, dark space. The first week passed like a dream. Lila received notice of her new salary, $10,000 a month, 8 times what she had earned working 2 jobs combined. Mia was enrolled in a private school with a specialized medical care program where a pediatric cardiologist monitored her condition weekly. And Harlan Crow, the man who had threatened to take everything from her, suddenly vanished. No more messages, no more calls, no more shadows following her when she went out. Lila did not ask what had happened. She did not want to know. She only knew that when Damian Blackthorn wanted someone to disappear, they disappeared. Her job began with the basics. Sienna, Damian's personal assistant, a sharp woman whose eyes miss nothing, was assigned to train her. "You need to learn how to dress," Sienna said bluntly during their first meeting, gaze sweeping over Lila's plain clothes. "How to speak, how to move through a room without drawing attention, yet still seeing everything. You have 2 weeks." Lila learned. She learned to wear tailored suits instead of wrinkled waitress uniforms. She learned to walk in heels without stumbling. She learned the names and roles of dozens of people in the Blackthorn organization, from executives in the front company, Blackthorn Industries, to Damian's closest inner circle. And she began attending meetings. The first was a dinner with investors at an upscale Italian restaurant. Lila sat in the corner, silent as a shadow, watching. She watched how people smiled, how they shook hands, how their eyes moved when they spoke. She realized that 4 years as a waitress had taught her more than she had ever known. She knew when someone was lying because they avoided eye contact. She knew when someone was nervous because they drank too quickly. She knew when someone was hiding something because they smiled too much, too loudly, too falsely. Damian Blackthorn's world was a world of expensive suits and fake smiles, a world of money and power where everyone had an agenda and no one could be trusted. Lila adapted, not because she belonged here, but because Mia needed her to be strong, and Lila would do anything to keep her daughter safe, even become the eyes and ears of a mafia boss. The call came at 2 a.m. Lila was sleeping deeply, exhausted after a long day observing a board meeting, when the ringing phone dragged her out of her dreams. Elias's number. She sat bolt upright, heart racing. "What happened?" "The boy wants to see you," Elias said shortly. "He won't sleep. He keeps calling your name." Lila did not need to ask which boy. She knew. "I'm coming now." 20 minutes later, Lila stood before the iron gates of the Blackthorn estate, a castle in the heart of Chicago with gray stone walls and vast gardens drowned in darkness. The gates opened automatically as she approached, and a servant led her through long marble corridors to Caleb's bedroom. The boy was curled up on the bed, knees drawn to his chest, eyes wide as he stared into the dark. When he saw Lila, Caleb burst into tears. "Aunt Lila!" He ran to her, clinging to her as if she were the only lifeline in a dark sea. "I'm so scared. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. I see the guns. I see the blood." Lila knelt and gathered him into her arms. She felt his small body shaking, heard his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Nightmares. She understood. Mia had been the same after nights when Grant's rage exploded. "It's all right now," she whispered, stroking his hair. "I'm here. No one can hurt you anymore." "But I'm still scared," Caleb sobbed. "Every time I close my eyes, they come back. I don't want to sleep anymore." Lila led him back to the bed and sat beside him, holding his hands in hers. She remembered the nights she had soothed Mia to sleep after her daughter cried herself empty, terrified by the sound of her father's shouting. She had learned how to face fear, and she would teach Caleb the same way. "You know," she began softly, "fear is like a monster. It looks huge and terrifying when you stare straight at it. But there's a secret." "What secret?" Caleb looked up, eyes still red but less frantic. "Fear is only strong when you give it power." Lila smiled. "If you learn to control your breathing, to guide your thoughts, you can make that monster smaller, small enough to fit in your pocket and forget about it." She taught him how to breathe deeply, how to focus on good thoughts instead of frightening images. She told him about Mia, about the times her daughter had been afraid and how the two of them had faced it together. Little by little, Caleb calmed down. He leaned his head against Lila's shoulder, eyelids growing heavy with sleep. "Aunt Lila," he whispered. "Yes, sweetheart?" "I wish my mom were still alive." His voice broke. "She used to hold me like this, too. She used to tell me stories when I was scared. I miss her so much." Lila felt her heart shatter. She held him tighter. tears spilling despite her effort to hold them back. "Your mom is always with you," she whispered, "in your heart, in every breath you take. She loves you, and that love never goes away. Never." She did not know that Damian was standing outside the door, his back against the wall, head bowed. He'd been there for some time, listening to every word Lila spoke to his son, and in the darkness of the hallway, the steel-gray eyes of the mafia boss were wet with tears. When Caleb was finally asleep, Lila gently laid him back on the bed and pulled the blanket over him. She turned and startled when she saw Damian standing in the doorway. He was looking at her with an expression she had never seen before, not cold, not controlled, but something fragile and deeply wounded. "My wife's name was Sarah," he said, voice rough. "She died 3 years ago, a car accident. That's what they said, but I know the truth. She was killed because of me, because my enemies wanted me to suffer." Lila said nothing. She simply stood there and listened. Damian looked into Caleb's room, gaze distant. "Since Sarah died, I haven't known how to talk to my son anymore. I don't know how to comfort him. I only know how to protect him. But tonight, you did what I couldn't do. Thank you." The board meeting took place on Thursday in the conference room on the top floor of the Blackthorn Industries building. 12 people sat around the massive oak table, all dressed in expensive suits, all wearing the confidence of those accustomed to holding power in their hands. The chief executive officer, the chief financial officer, board members, major investors. Each of them was a vital link in Damian Blackthorn's empire, and one of them was a traitor. Lila sat in the corner of the room, separate from the main table, a notebook resting on her lap. She wore the light gray suit Sienna had chosen, hair pulled into a neat bun, the appearance of an ordinary assistant not worth noticing. No one looked at her. No one thought she mattered. And that was exactly what Damian wanted. "Let's begin," Damian said from the head of the table, voice low and authoritative. "First item, the third quarter financial report. Raymond, go ahead." Raymond Ashford stood up. 45 years old, silver hair slicked back, round face and small eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. He had been the chief financial officer of Blackthorn Industries for nearly 10 years, managing billions of dollars and regarded as one of Damian's most trusted associates. He clicked the remote and the presentation appeared on the screen. Numbers, charts, projections. Lila did not understand all the figures, but she did not need to. Her job was not to analyze finances. Her job was to observe people, and she saw a great deal. Raymond did not look Damian in the eye. Throughout the presentation, he looked at the screen, down at the table, at the other members. But he avoided his boss's gaze as if it were fire. His hands trembled slightly each time he changed a slide, subtle enough that most people would not notice, but Lila was trained to see it. She had watched thousands of customers' hands shake when they lied about tips. She knew what that tremor meant. And there was the sweat. The conference room was cool with air conditioning, yet Raymond repeatedly lifted his hand to wipe his forehead. He drank water 3 times in 15 minutes, each time swallowing quickly, almost desperately. That was not the behavior of a man confident in what he was presenting. That was the behavior of someone hiding something. The meeting ended after 2 hours. The members filed out one by one, shaking hands, exchanging polite words. Raymond was among the first to leave, walking fast as if fire were at his back. Damian stayed behind, waiting until only he and Lila remained in the empty room. "What did you see?" he asked without turning around. "Raymond Ashford," Lila replied calmly. "He's hiding something." Damian turned to look at her. "Why do you think that?" Lila described what she had observed, the avoided eye contact, the trembling hands, the sweat in a cold room, the way he drank water as if his throat were dry from tension, the way he rushed out after the meeting as if he could not endure another second in the same room with Damian. "That isn't the behavior of an innocent man," Lila concluded. "That's the behavior of someone who's afraid, and people are only afraid when they have something to hide." Damian was silent for a long moment. Then he took out his phone and dialed. "Elias," he said when the call was answered, "investigate Raymond Ashford. All accounts, all transactions, all communications over the past 6 months. Quietly. No one else is to know." He ended the call and looked at Lila. "If you're right," he said, "this will be the most important discovery since the night at the warehouse." "And if I'm wrong?" Lila asked. Damian smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. "I hope you're wrong, because if you're right, it means I trusted the wrong man for 10 years. 3 days later, Elias knocked on Damian's office door, carrying a black briefcase, face dark like a sky before a storm. Lila was sitting in the corner reviewing the guest list for the charity gala scheduled for the following week when she felt the air in the room suddenly grow thick and heavy. "Did you find anything?" Damian asked, voice calm though his gray eyes had already begun to darken. Elias placed the briefcase on the desk, opened it, and pulled out a thick folder. He did not speak. He simply slid the folder toward Damian. Lila watched Damian read the first page, and she saw something she'd never seen before. His jaw tightened, muscles jumping beneath his skin. The steel gray of his eyes sank into something black and bottomless. But he did not shout. He did not slam the desk. There was no outburst at all, only a silence so cold it felt suffocating. And Lila realized that Damian Blackthorn's true anger was not loud. It was quiet, it was cold, and it was lethal. "How much?" Damian asked, voice low like the growl of a predator. 500,000, Elias replied, split into multiple transfers over the past 6 months, sent to offshore accounts. All of it can be traced back to Vincenzo Rossi. A chill ran down Lila's spine. $500,000. That was the price Raymond Ashford had taken to betray Damian's son. "What else?" Damian said, turning the next page, hand tightening until his knuckles went white. "Messages," Elias said. Raymond sent Vincenzo's people Caleb's schedule, which school, dismissal times, transport routes, everything. He'd been tracking the boy for 3 months before the kidnapping happened. The room fell silent. Lila could hear her own heartbeat, could hear the clock ticking on the wall. She looked at Damian and saw something in his eyes that made her want to step back. It was not anger anymore. It was emptiness. The emptiness of a man who had decided to kill. 10 years, Damian said, voice flat, frozen like a lake in winter. "He worked for me for 10 years. I trusted him. I let him into my home, let him meet my son, let him know things only a handful of people knew, and he sold Caleb out for $500,000. He stood up slowly, every movement radiating deadly intent. "Elias, take care of him." The 2 words fell like a death sentence, no explanation needed, no details required. Elias simply nodded once and turned to leave. Lila sat frozen, unable to move. She had just watched a man be sentenced to death with 2 quiet words. She had just seen the true dark side of Damian Blackthorn, the side he had kept hidden during the weeks he spent with her and Caleb. "You saved Caleb," Lila spoke, voice trembling despite her effort to stay steady. "You saved my son again by finding him. You did the right thing, don't doubt that." Lila swallowed, "But he's going to die." "He tried to kill my son," Damian replied, voice unwavering. "He took money to deliver an 8-year-old child into the hands of men who wouldn't hesitate to put a bullet in his head. What do you think he deserves?" Lila could not answer. She did not know how to answer. In the world she had grown up in, people called the police when someone committed a crime. They let the law handle it. But in Damian Blackthorn's world, there was no law, only the justice of the strongest. The next day, Raymond Ashford disappeared. No one ever saw him again. Not at the company, not at home, not anywhere. As if he had never existed at all. And that night, Lila lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a turmoil inside her she could not name. She had been right about Raymond. She had saved Caleb from harm again, but she had also condemned a man to death with her observations. She felt both guilty and vindicated at the same time, and she did not know how she was supposed to feel about that. 2 weeks had passed since Raymond disappeared. Lila tried not to think about it, tried to focus on her work, on Mia, on the new life she was building. But every night, his image still haunted her. The round face behind gold-rimmed glasses, the trembling voice as he presented his report, the sweat-soaked hands turning each slide. She wondered how he had died, whether it had hurt, whether he had been afraid. Then she scolded herself for thinking about it at all. That night, Lila was working late in Damian's office. He was on a business trip. That was what she had been told, and she needed to prepare several documents for a meeting the next day. The vast room lay in darkness, lit only by the desk lamp casting light over the small corner where she sat. The clock read 11:45 at night when the door suddenly opened. Lila looked up and saw Damian step inside. He looked exhausted, hair disheveled, tie loosened, and on the sleeve of his white shirt were dark red stains she recognized instantly. Blood. Lila stood up at once, but she did not scream. She did not ask questions. She simply looked at Damian for a moment, then silently walked to the cabinet in the corner, took out a white cloth and a bottle of water. She returned and handed him the cloth without a word. Damian looked at her, and in his tired gray eyes there was something Lila could not read. Surprise, confusion, and perhaps a trace of respect. "You're not asking," he said, voice rough. "No," Lila replied calmly. "Aren't you afraid of me?" Damian asked, taking the cloth but never taking his eyes off her. "The blood on my sleeve. You know what kind of blood it is." Lila glanced at the red stains, then looked up at his face. She thought of everything she knew about Damian Blackthorn, a mafia boss, a killer, a man who could sentence someone to death with 2 quiet words. But she also thought of another Damian, the father who had knelt and begged for his son's life, the man who had stood outside Caleb's bedroom door with tears in his eyes, the man who had told her about Sarah, about losing his wife, about the loneliness he had carried for 3 years. "I'm afraid," Lila said honestly, "but not of you." "Then what are you afraid of?" Lila was silent for a moment, then she spoke, voice as light as breath. "I'm afraid because I'm not afraid of you. I should be afraid. I should run as far away as I can, but I don't want to. And that scares me more than anything." Damian stepped closer, one step, then another, until he stood directly in front of her. So close she could smell gunpowder and blood, feel the warmth of his body, see the small scar at the corner of his left eye. "I'm afraid too," he said, voice low like a whisper in the dark. "I swore that after Sarah I'd never let anyone into my heart again. I built walls so high no one could climb them. But you didn't climb those walls. You just walked straight through them, as if they didn't exist." Lila did not know who moved first. Maybe both of them, maybe neither. She only knew that a moment later, his mouth was on hers. The kiss was not gentle. It was fierce, desperate, like 2 drowning souls clinging to each other in a dark sea. Damian kissed her as if she were air and he had forgotten how to breathe. Lila kissed him back as if for the first time in her life she was touching something real. Then reality crashed in. Mia, her job, the dark world she was stepping into. All the reasons she should not be standing here in the arms of a mafia boss with the taste of blood still faint on his lips. Lila pushed him away, breathing hard, heart pounding as if it might explode. "We can't," she whispered, voice shaking. "Why not?" Damian asked, hands still on her waist, unwilling to let go. "Because you're my boss. Because I have a child. Because your world is too dark. Because I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing everything," Lila said, tears suddenly spilling over, though she did not understand why. "I've already lost too much. I can't bear to lose anymore." She broke free from his arms, turned, and ran out of the room. She did not look back. She did not dare look back, because she knew that if she saw those gray eyes one more time, she would not be able to leave. 3 days after that kiss, Lila tried to avoid Damian. She arrived at the office earlier, left later when he was not around, communicated through Sienna instead of seeing him directly. She needed time. She needed to think. She needed to understand why her heart still raced whenever she thought of those gray eyes, those lips, the way he spoke her name as if it were a prayer. But fate did not give her time. The call came at 2 in the afternoon while Lila was sitting in a meeting with investors. It was the number from Mia's school. Her heart clenched as she answered. Miss Whitaker. The teacher's voice was shaking on the other end. Mia collapsed during class. An ambulance is taking her to St. Mary Hospital. You need to come right away. Lila's world shattered. She did not remember how she left the meeting room, did not remember whether she took the stairs or the elevator, did not remember driving or being driven. She only remembered standing outside the emergency room, seeing her tiny daughter lying motionless on a hospital bed, face white as paper, wires and machines attached to her small body. The doctor told her about Mia's heart, about the sudden deterioration, about the need for immediate emergency surgery, or the child would not survive. The cost was $80,000, they said. Did she have insurance? Could she make an advance payment? They needed financial confirmation before proceeding. Lila stood there staring at her daughter and felt as if someone were crushing her heart. $80,000. She had a little over $20,000 in her savings account, the money she had managed to put aside from her new salary over the past 2 months. She was still $60,000 short. She did not have it. She did not know how to get it, and her daughter was slowly dying on that hospital bed. Please save my child, Lila said, voice breaking into 1,000 pieces. I'll pay. I'll do anything. Please save my child. She collapsed into a chair in the hallway, head falling into her hands, and she cried. For the first time in years, she cried as if there were no tomorrow. She cried for Mia, for her own helplessness, for all the years she had fought to keep her daughter alive, only to reach this moment when she could do nothing but watch her child die because she did not have enough money. Evelyn. The voice cut straight through her pain. Lila looked up through blurred tears and saw Damian standing in front of her. He was wearing a black suit, hair slightly disheveled as if he had run to get there, and his gray eyes were fixed on her with something she did not dare name. What are you doing here? She asked, voice raw. Sienna called me, Damian said. You left the meeting without a word. I knew something was wrong. He sat down beside her, and without waiting for her to say more, he took out his phone. Elias, get Dr. Phillips to St. Mary Hospital right now. I don't care where he is. I don't care what he's doing. This is an order. Tell him Damian Blackthorn needs him to save a child. He ended the call and turned to Lila. Dr. Phillips is the top pediatric cardiac surgeon in the country. He'll be here within an hour. I can't pay, Lila began. But Damian cut her off. You saved my son, he said, voice leaving no room for argument. Now I save your daughter. We're even. An hour later, Dr. Phillips arrived, a silver-haired man with hands people said could perform miracles. He examined Mia, reviewed the tests, and nodded. The surgery would be difficult but possible. He would operate himself. Lila sat in the waiting room, staring at the closed doors of the operating theater. Damian sat beside her, saying nothing. Simply there. He did not leave. He did not take work calls. He did not do anything except sit next to her, hand resting lightly against her back like a reminder that she was not alone. 1 hour passed. 2 hours. 3 hours. Lila did not eat, did not drink, did not move. She just stared at the door and prayed to any god who might be listening. 4 hours. 5 hours. Damian was still there. He had missed at least 3 major meetings. Lila knew because she managed his schedule, but he did not mention it. He just sat there, steady and patient, like a rock in the middle of a storm. 6 hours later, the operating room doors opened. Dr. Phillips stepped out, face tired but eyes bright. The surgery was a success, he said. The child is very strong. She'll need time to recover, but she'll be fine. Her heart will be healthy. Layla did not hear anything after the word fine. She felt her knees give way, felt tears burst free like a broken dam, felt her body shake with a relief so overwhelming she could not bear it. and then arms wrapped around her, strong, warm, holding her upright as she nearly collapsed. Damian pulled her into his chest, holding her tightly as if she were the most precious thing in the world. "It's all right now," he whispered into her hair, voice warm and gentle in a way she never imagined he could be. "She'll be all right. You're not alone anymore." Lila cried in his arms, crying because Mia had been saved, crying from relief, crying because for the first time in a very long time, she felt that someone was truly there for her. 1 week after the surgery, Mia was able to sit up and smile. She was still weak and still needed monitoring, but the light had returned to her eyes and her cheeks were rosier. Lila sat beside her daughter's bed every day, reading her stories, singing the lullabies her own mother used to sing, and thanking fate for allowing her to keep the most precious thing in her life. Damian came to visit every evening. He brought toys for Mia, flowers for Lila, and sat in the corner of the room watching the two of them with a look Lila no longer tried to understand. She already knew what that look meant. She just did not dare admit it. Until that night. Mia was sleeping soundly, breathing calm and steady. Lila stood by the window, looking out at the Chicago night sky when Damian came to stand beside her. Silence stretched between them, but it was an easy silence, the kind shared by two people who did not need words to understand each other. "I've been thinking about what you said that night," Damian spoke softly, keeping his voice low so he would not wake Mia, "about being afraid of losing everything." Lila did not turn around. She kept looking out the window, but she was listening. "I'm afraid too," Damian continued. "I lost Sarah. I thought I'd never be able to love anyone again. I built a wall around my heart and swore no one would ever get inside. And then you appeared, a waitress who chased me through the night just to return $3,000, a woman who ran into gunfire to shield my son, a mother who fought alone for years without ever giving up." Lila turned and she saw that Damian's gray eyes were no longer cold. They were filled with something warm, something fierce, something she had been trying to deny for weeks. "I don't know what the future holds," Damian said. "I can't promise my world won't be dangerous, but I can promise one thing. I'll protect you and Mia with my life if you give me the chance." Lila looked at him, at the man who had saved her daughter, who had sat beside her for 6 hours in the surgical waiting room, who had held her when she broke apart. She thought of all the reasons she should say no. He was a mafia boss. He had enemies everywhere. He lived in a world of blood and violence. But then she thought of the way he looked at Caleb, at Mia, at her. She thought of the tenderness beneath the cold exterior, of the broken heart he tried so hard to hide. "I'm afraid too," Lila said, voice trembling slightly. "But I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of running. If you're willing to face that fear with me, then I'm willing to try." Damian smiled, the first true smile she had ever seen on his lips. He lifted his hand, brushed her cheek gently, then leaned down and kissed her. This kiss was different from the last. There was no desperation, no urgency. It was gentle and unhurried, like a promise that did not need words. But their happiness lasted only 3 days. On Wednesday morning, Elias burst into the office, face ashen. "Boss," he said, voice taut. "Vincenzo Rossi." Damian sprang to his feet, gray eyes darkening instantly. "He's dead. I confirmed his body after the warehouse night." "He's not dead," Elias shook his head. "That was a double. The real Vincenzo is still alive and he just sent this." Elias placed an envelope on the desk. Damian opened it and Lila saw him freeze like stone. Inside was a photograph of her taken as she walked Mia into school the morning before. On the back, a handwritten message read, "She will die like your wife." Sarah thought she was safe too. Lila felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. Damian crushed the photograph in his fist, and when he looked up, Lila saw something in his eyes that made her shiver. Not fear, but pure primal rage. The fury of a predator whose territory and family had been threatened. "You have to leave," Damian said, voice cold as steel. "I'll send you and Mia somewhere safe in Europe. You'll stay there until I finish Vincenzo." "No," Lila replied, voice surprisingly calm. Damian stared at her as if she had said something insane. "You don't understand. He killed Sarah. He won't hesitate to kill you." "I understand." Lila stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest, feeling his heart pounding violently beneath her palm. "But I've been running my whole life. Running from Grant. Running from Harlan Crow. Running from the past. I'm not running anymore." "This isn't courage," she said, voice almost pleading. "This is recklessness." "This is me standing beside you," Lila answered. "You said you'd protect me. I believe you. But you have to believe me too. I'm not something to hide away. I'm your ally. Let me fight with you." Damian looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and pulled her into his arms. "You'll be the death of me, Evelyn Whitaker. Or I'll be your life," Lila whispered. "Now tell me the plan." "Vincenzo wants me, then let him see me. Use me as bait." The plan was set in motion on Saturday night. Lila would appear alone at a cafe on the west side, a place where, according to Elias's intelligence, Vincenzo's men were watching. She would sit there long enough for them to recognize her, long enough for them to report back to Vincenzo, and when they moved, Damian's team would ambush them. It was the perfect plan. But no plan is perfect when the enemy already knows what you are about to do. Lila sat in the cafe exactly as planned, a cold latte in front of her, a book open but unread. She could feel eyes on her from the black car parked across the street. She could hear Elias's voice through the tiny earpiece hidden in her ear. Everything was going according to plan. 3 men entered the cafe wearing long coats that concealed weapons underneath. Lila recognized them instantly, Vincenzo's men. She stood up, pretended to panic, and ran toward the back exit just as arranged. Damian's ambush team was supposed to be waiting there. But when she pushed the back door open, it was not Elias or Damian's men who were waiting. It was a black van and 4 men she had never seen before. Before she could scream, a hand clamped over her mouth and something pierced her neck. The world went dark. When Lila woke, she was sitting on a wooden chair in an empty concrete room, her hands tied behind her back. Her head felt like it was splitting open. Her mouth was dry, and as she struggled to focus, she saw the man standing in front of her. Vincenzo Rossi. He looked different from what she had imagined, not tall or imposing, just a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and eyes as cold as dead fish. But it was that very ordinariness that made him more terrifying. The most dangerous monsters are the ones who look completely normal. "She's awake," Vincenzo said, voice gentle and polite, as if he were welcoming a guest to a party. "Miss Whitaker, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you, the woman who softened Damian Blackthorn." "How did you know?" Lila asked hoarsely. "How did you know our plan?" Vincenzo smiled, a smile that never reached his eyes. "Did you really think Raymond Ashford was the only mole? Poor Damian. He trusts people far too easily. In his empire, there are at least 5 people working for me, and one of them told me all about your little plan tonight." Lila felt the blood in her veins turn cold. 5 people. 5 traitors Damian did not know about. She had led him straight into a trap while thinking they were setting one for the enemy. "You know why you're here, don't you?" Vincenzo tilted his head. "You're going to die. Not because you did anything wrong, but because Damian loves you, and I want him to suffer, just like he made me suffer when he killed my brother." Lila looked straight into his eyes, forcing herself to hold back the fear crushing her chest. "If you kill me, he'll never stop hunting you." Vincenzo shrugged. "He'll try, but without you, he'll collapse, just like he did after Sarah died, and this time I'll make sure he never gets back up." He pulled out his gun and checked the magazine calmly, as if doing household chores. "Any last words, Miss Whitaker?" Lila thought of Mia, of her smile, her laughter, the way she hugged her every night before sleep. She thought of Damian, of his gray eyes, of their kiss, of the future they would never have. and she closed her eyes, not out of fear, but because she wanted the last images in her mind to be the people she loved. Then all hell broke loose. An explosion, shattering glass, gunfire, screams. Lila opened her eyes and saw the door blasted open, smoke and chaos flooding the room, and in the middle of that madness, she saw Damian. He stepped through the doorway like death incarnate, gun in hand, gray eyes blazing with a fury she had never seen. His men poured in from every direction, overwhelming Vincenzo's guards. Vincenzo turned his gun toward Damian, but he was a heartbeat too slow. Damian fired first. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Vincenzo Rossi fell to the floor, eyes staring up at the ceiling, and he never moved again. "Evelyn!" Damian rushed to her, hands shaking as he cut the ropes, face pale as paper. "Are you hurt? Tell me you're all right." "I'm okay," Lila whispered weakly. "I'm okay. You came." Damian pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. But she did not protest. She needed this. She needed to know she was alive, that he was alive, that the nightmare was over. "Don't ever scare me like that again," Damian whispered into her hair, voice breaking. "Never. I can't lose you. I can't." "I'm sorry," Lila cried, tears soaking into his shirt. "I'm sorry." Damian did not say anything else. He just held her in a room filled with bodies and the stench of gunpowder, holding her as if she were the only thing left in the world that mattered. In the weeks following the warehouse rescue, Damian did not let his guard down. Using the encrypted data recovered from Vincenzo's private devices, Elias meticulously hunted down the remaining 4 moles within the organization. They were rooted out and dealt with as coldly as Raymond Ashford had been, ensuring no shadows remained to threaten Lila or the children. Only when the empire was finally clean did Damian allow himself to truly breathe. 1 year later, the Blackthorn estate was filled with laughter. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the trees in the vast garden, spilling onto the green lawn where 2 children chased each other. Mia, now 6 years old, was healthy and bursting with energy like any other child. The surgical scar on her chest had faded, and her small heart now beat strong and steady without any trace of trouble. Caleb ran after her, trying to keep up, his laughter ringing across the garden. At 9 years old, he no longer suffered from nightmares. He no longer woke in the middle of the night with choked sobs. He had learned how to face his fear, and more importantly, he had found a complete family. Lila stood on the second-floor balcony, leaning against the railing, looking down at the garden with a smile she could not suppress. On her ring finger, a diamond ring sparkled in the sunlight. The wedding had taken place 3 months earlier, a private ceremony attended only by those closest to them. There was no press, no media, just them and the people they loved. Lila did not need luxury. She only needed Damian, Mia, and Caleb. She only needed her family. "Dad, catch me!" Caleb's voice rang out, and Lila watched as Damian stepped out onto the terrace, slipped off his jacket, rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, and joined the children in their game. The most powerful mafia boss in Chicago ran across the lawn, pretending he could not catch them, letting their laughter explode every time they slipped from his grasp. This was the Damian the outside world would never see, Damian who belonged only to her. Mia tripped on the grass and Damian stopped instantly, dropping to one knee to check if she was hurt. When Mia only laughed and begged to keep playing, he let out a breath of relief and lifted her onto his shoulders. Lila's daughter had become his daughter too, not by blood, but by love, and that was what mattered most. Lila heard footsteps behind her, then felt familiar arms wrap around her waist. She did not need to turn to know who it was. Damian had handed the children over to the nanny and come to her. "What are you thinking about?" Damian asked, voice warm beside her ear. "I'm thinking about that night," Lila replied, eyes still on the garden where Mia and Caleb were now playing with their new golden retriever. "The night everything began, $3,000 on a marble table." Damian was quiet for a moment, then turned her to face him, looking into her eyes. "You still remember?" How could I forget? Lila smiled. That was the night that changed my life. I was just a poor waitress who decided to return money to a stranger. I never imagined it would lead to all of this. Damian lifted his hand and gently brushed her cheek, gray eyes full of love. You weren't just a waitress who returned money, he said, voice like a vow. You're the woman who taught a devil how to love. You showed me that after all the darkness, there's still light. You gave me a family, a reason to live, a reason to become a better man. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, Evelyn Blackthorn. Tears welled in Lila's eyes, but they were tears of happiness. She rose on her toes, pressed a gentle kiss to his lips, and she knew that at last, after all the pain and storms, she had found where she belonged. Mom, Dad, Mia's voice called from the garden. Come play with us. Damian looked down, then back at Lila, smiling the smile only she ever saw. Let's go, he said. Our family is waiting. And together they walked down the steps into the sun-filled garden, into the life they had both fought so hard to earn. Their story began with $3,000 on a marble table. It continued through blood, tears, fear, and hope. And it ended here, in this garden, with the laughter of children and the love of two broken hearts that had found each other. This is the lesson this story wants to leave with you. Integrity and kindness are never meaningless. Sometimes a small decision, a single right action when no one is watching, can change your entire destiny. Lila did not keep the money because she knew it was not hers. She had no idea where that choice would lead. She only did what her conscience demanded, and that was what saved her, saved Mia, and saved Damian from the darkness. In life, we often stand before difficult choices. Keep or return, stay silent or speak up, run away or face the truth, and those choices define who we are. Always choose what is right, even when no one is watching, because sometimes those moments will change your life in ways you never could have imagined. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, like and share this video so we can continue spreading meaningful stories every day. We'd love to know how you feel about Lila and Damian's story. Have you ever stood before a difficult choice like that? Have you ever done the right thing even knowing you might lose something? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We truly want to hear what's in your heart because your story deserves to be told too. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and peace every day. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the story. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.
We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and peace every day. Thank you for staying with us until the end of the story. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.